Ethan lived alone on a small repair station near the edge of human space. It was a quiet place made of metal and lights floating above a silent mining moon. He spent his days fixing broken shuttles and collecting supplies from traders who passed by every few weeks. Most nights were calm and empty. He liked it that way. The stars were the only company he had, and he thought he would spend the rest of his life among them, far away from noise and war. One evening, while he was checking the radar, a weak signal blinked on his screen. It was faint, almost lost in the static. At first he thought it was another piece of old junk drifting near the moon. But when he focused the scanner, he saw something small, a pod, slowly spinning in the cold darkness. It sent a repeating distress call, soft and broken, as if it had been out there for days. Ethan hesitated. Out here, helping someone could mean trouble, but leaving them would feel wrong. After a moment, he put on his suit, climbed into his small shuttle, and went out to bring it in. When he reached the pod, its surface was scratched and burned. The door was half jammed. Inside, he found a young girl, not human. Her skin was pale silver with a soft glow, and her hair looked like threads of white glass. She was barely awake, breathing weakly. Her eyes opened for a second, showing a strange violet color that seemed to shine even in the dark. She tried to speak, but her voice was broken. Her words mixed with static from the pod's failing translator. Ethan gently lifted her out and brought her back to the station. She was light, almost weightless in his arms. He placed her on the small cot near the heater and covered her with a thermal blanket. For a moment he just stood there, unsure of what to do. He had never seen an alien up close before. Her hands were small, with faint lines that glowed under the skin. She looked scared and tired, not dangerous. He fetched a bottle of water and some protein bread, unsure if she could eat it. When he held it out, she looked at it as if she didn't understand, then took a tiny bite and smiled weakly. That small smile made him relax a little. Her voice came again, slow and careful through the translator. "Thank you." She struggled with the sounds, but the meaning was clear. Ethan nodded. "You're safe here," he said softly, even though he wasn't sure it was true. He checked the pod's log later and saw that it came from far beyond any mapped colony. There was no name, no registration, no clue about who she was or how she got here. As the hours passed, the girl slept deeply. Ethan sat at the desk nearby, watching the quiet lights of his station. He kept thinking about how she ended up drifting alone in space. Maybe pirates had attacked her ship, or maybe she was lost from some convoy. Whatever happened, she had survived, and now she was in his care. He didn't know why, but something about her presence felt strange. The air around her seemed warmer, and when she breathed, the nearby lights flickered as if reacting to her. When she woke again, she looked stronger. She tried to sit up, and Ethan helped her. Her eyes searched the room, curious but calm. She touched the metal wall and smiled slightly. "Home?" she asked. Ethan shook his head. "Just a workshop," he said with a small grin. "Not home." She tilted her head, trying to understand the word. Then she pointed at him. "You, good man." He didn't know what to say to that. No one had called him that in years. Over the next few days, the girl stayed on the station. Ethan learned her name, or at least what it sounded like. "Lyra." She said it softly, touching her chest when she spoke. Her voice had a melody in it, almost like singing. She followed Ethan everywhere, watching how he fixed engines and cleaned the air filters. Sometimes she helped by passing tools, even though she didn't know their names. He was surprised by how quickly she learned simple human words. She repeated everything he said, as if trying to memorize the language through sound. Ethan began to notice small things about her that didn't fit the story of a poor refugee. Her clothes, though damaged, were made of strange material that shimmered like liquid silver. Around her neck was a pendant with markings he didn't recognize. He asked where she came from, but she only said, "Far. No, go back." There was sadness in her tone, something deep that made him stop asking. Sometimes late at night, Ethan would wake and find Lyra standing near the window, staring at the stars. She would whisper words in her own tongue, soft and full of emotion. He couldn't understand them, but they sounded like memories. Once he saw tears on her cheeks, tiny drops that shone like glass. When he asked if she was okay, she wiped them quickly and said, "Dream." Then she smiled again, pretending to be fine. That simple act of hiding her sadness touched him more than anything. Days turned into weeks. Ethan grew used to her company. The station no longer felt empty. Lyra laughed at small things, like when the food machine made funny noises, or when he dropped a tool and muttered under his breath. She would laugh in a soft, ringing way that made the air feel lighter. Ethan didn't understand why he cared so much about her safety. Maybe it was because she reminded him of someone lost, or maybe it was because he could see how alone she really was. One afternoon, while fixing an old comms array, Ethan noticed her staring at the stars again. "You miss your home?" he asked quietly. Lyra looked at him and nodded. "Home, no safe, bad people." Her voice trembled. Ethan frowned but said nothing more. He didn't want to push her. Instead, he handed her a small metal charm he kept from Earth, a tiny coin with the symbol of a tree. "This keeps me calm," he said. "Maybe it will help you too." She took it carefully, looking at it as if it were something sacred. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispered. Hearing her say his name made something inside him warm. That night, as he closed his eyes, he thought about how strange fate could be. A random signal in space had brought a silver-skinned girl into his life. He didn't know who she really was or what her story might be, but for the first time in many years, he felt that he wasn't alone anymore. He didn't know that his small act of kindness would soon draw the attention of powers far beyond anything he could imagine, and that the quiet girl sleeping under his roof was not who she seemed at all. As passed slowly on the small station, and Ethan began to feel that the quiet routine had changed into something gentler. Lyra brought a kind of peace he hadn't felt in years. She would wake early, tidy the small kitchen, and hum songs in her strange language. Sometimes she drew patterns on the fogged glass of the window with her glowing fingers, circles, stars, and shapes he didn't understand. When he asked about them, she only smiled and said softly, "Old stories." Ethan liked listening to her voice, even when he didn't understand her words. She spoke carefully, trying to use human phrases. "Your world," she said one morning, pointing at a small globe of Earth on his desk. "Blue and green." "Very beautiful," he nodded. Yes, it was home. She looked curious. "Was," he sighed, leaning back. "It's far now. Too far for someone like me." Lyra tilted her head, not fully understanding, but she didn't ask more. Each day she learned something new. She practiced reading small words on the screen, repeating them slowly. Light, door, sky, friend. When she said that last word, she looked at Ethan with a shy smile, as if testing if it was the right one. He smiled back and said gently, "Yes, friend." That simple word meant more to her than he realized. Ethan started to forget how strange it was to have an alien living with him. Lyra became part of the station's rhythm. When he worked on broken engines, she handed him tools with care. She always seemed to know what he needed before he asked. Her small hands glowed faintly when she touched metal, and sometimes the machines reacted. Small sparks of light flickered around her fingertips. He once asked if that was some kind of power, but she shook her head quickly and said, "Just my energy." Then she looked away, almost afraid. He didn't push her. Everyone carried secrets, and he felt she had many. There was a softness in her that made him protect her without even thinking. One afternoon, when a supply drone docked, Lyra hid behind the doorway. She didn't like strangers. Ethan spoke with the drone pilot, an old friend who delivered parts once a month. "Heard rumors," the pilot said while sorting the cargo. "Something's happening out there. Some big empire searching for someone. Even the border patrols are on alert." Ethan shrugged, pretending not to care. "Doesn't matter here. We're too small for anyone to notice." But the words stayed in his mind long after the pilot left. That night, Lyra was quiet. She sat by the window, holding the small Earth coin Ethan had given her. The light from the stars reflected in her eyes, turning them soft purple. "You sad?" she asked him suddenly. He shook his head, though it wasn't true. "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how small we are," he said. "How the universe keeps moving even when we stop." She thought for a moment, then said, "Small things can still shine." He looked at her and smiled. Her words were simple, but somehow wise. The next day, strange signals began to appear on the radar. They were faint but patterned, like coded transmissions. Ethan tried to decode them, but they didn't match any human channel. He mentioned it to Lyra, but she only said quietly, "Ignore. Not safe." The way she said it made him pause. "Not safe for who?" he asked. She didn't answer. Later that evening, Ethan found Lyra in the storage bay, standing near the emergency beacon. Her hand hovered above it, glowing softly. When he asked what she was doing, she stepped back quickly and said, "I fix." But he could see the beacon was fine. She wasn't repairing it. She had been touching it gently, almost like she was trying to listen through it. "Lyra," he said softly, "are you sure you're telling me everything?" For a moment she looked torn between honesty and fear. Then she whispered, "I run from bad people. They want me back. If I speak, they find." Ethan understood the fear in her eyes. He nodded slowly. "Then you're safe here. No one can find you." She gave him a faint smile, but it was the kind of smile people wear when they don't truly believe it. After that, she began to wake from sleep at strange hours, walking through the station's halls like she was listening to voices only she could hear. Sometimes the air around her shimmered faintly, and the lights flickered without reason. Ethan watched quietly, not wanting to frighten her. One afternoon, while they shared lunch, she asked him, "Why help me?" He looked surprised. "Because you needed help." She stared at her food and said softly, "Many humans would not." Ethan smiled gently. "Maybe not all, but some would. You just met the right one." That answer seemed to comfort her. She laughed quietly, a soft musical sound that filled the small room with warmth. As weeks passed, their bond grew stronger. Lyra began to decorate the small cabin with things she made. Tiny ornaments from scrap metal, soft lights from old circuits. The station felt more alive than it ever had before. Ethan sometimes caught himself wondering what his life would have been like if she hadn't appeared. He realized he looked forward to her laughter, her questions, and even her quiet silences. But the peace didn't last. One morning, while Ethan was fixing a vent pipe outside the station, his comm device crackled with a strange sound. A coded transmission broke through, deep, mechanical, and cold. The message was short. "We know where she is." Ethan froze, his hand tightening on the tool. He rushed back inside. The radar showed a fleet moving somewhere in the far distance, still too far to be sure, but heading in their direction. Lyra was in the control room, staring at the same signal. Her face looked pale, her eyes wide. "They come," she whispered. Ethan didn't ask how she knew. He just looked at her, then at the stars beyond the glass. "Who are they?" he asked. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she whispered, "My people." Ethan's chest felt heavy. The words explained too much. Her silver clothes, her strange energy, her fear of being found. All of it made sense now. She wasn't just any refugee. She was someone important, maybe too important. He wanted to ask what she had done or why she ran, but he stopped himself. Her eyes looked so lost that it hurt to see them. That night, the silence in the station felt different. Lyra sat near the heater, holding the earth coin tightly. "If they find me," she said quietly, "you must send me away." Ethan shook his head. "No, we'll think of something." She smiled sadly. "You are kind. Too kind." He didn't know how to answer that. When she went to sleep, Ethan stood by the window, staring at the endless field of stars. He thought about how a small act of kindness, one simple choice to help a stranger, had brought him here. He didn't regret it, even with the danger growing closer. Something inside told him that Lyra wasn't who she appeared to be, but somehow he also felt she wasn't the threat others might think. And so, as the soft hum of the station filled the air, Ethan made a silent promise to himself that no matter who Lyra truly was, he would protect her not because of what she was, but because she had become a part of his quiet world, and his heart knew that her story was far from over. The next few days felt heavy on the small station. The air seemed still, and the quiet hum of the machine sounded louder than before. Ethan could feel that something was about to change. The coded signals were becoming stronger, and every time he checked the radar, new traces appeared. Faint, distant, but slowly closing in. He didn't tell Lyra right away. He didn't want to make her worry. Lyra, however, already knew. She moved around the station in silence, her calm smile fading a little each day. Sometimes she stood near the window and whispered words in her soft language. Ethan could tell she was afraid, but she tried to hide it from him. One evening, as he was fixing a power line, he saw her staring at the pendant she wore around her neck. It was small and silver, with strange markings that seemed to move like water under the light. He had seen it many times, but never asked about it before. This time, something made him speak. "Lyra, that pendant, what does it mean?" She froze, her fingers tightening around it. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then, very quietly, she said, It means who I am. Her voice trembled slightly. Ethan frowned. Who you are? She nodded and looked up at him. Her violet eyes glowed faintly, filled with sadness. I did not tell you truth, she said slowly, choosing her words carefully. I am not poor. I am not lost traveler. I am from Karth Dominion. Ethan blinked. He had heard that name before. The Karth Dominion was one of the most powerful alien empires in the outer galaxy, known for their strict control and high technology. You're from the Dominion? He asked softly. Yes, she whispered. But I am not like them. I ran away. Ethan stepped closer, his voice calm but full of curiosity. Why would you run away from your own people? Lyra looked down at her hands, her silver skin shining faintly in the dim light. Because they wanted to make me something I am not. They wanted to use me. She touched her chest lightly. In my world, I am called heir. My family rules many worlds, but I do not want throne. I do not want power. I only wanted to be free. Her words were soft, yet they carried pain that Ethan could feel even without understanding her world. You're a princess? He said quietly. She nodded once, then whispered, yes, but not safe. If they find me, they take me back. They will make me do things I do not want to do. Her eyes filled with tears and her voice grew smaller. That is why I ran. Ethan sat down beside her. The truth shocked him, but he didn't feel fear and only a strange sadness for her. All this time, he said slowly, you've been hiding from them. Yes, she replied. But they always find. They have many eyes. They see through stars. He wanted to ask more, but he stopped himself. She already looked so tired from carrying her secret. Instead, he said gently, You're safe here, Lyra, I promise you. She looked up at him, searching his eyes for any doubt. When she found none, she smiled faintly. You always kind, she whispered. Even when I'm not honest. Ethan shook his head. You were scared. That's not the same as lying. The next morning, Ethan woke early to check the outer sensors. The signals were closer, much closer. A few hours, maybe a day before they reached the moon's orbit. He didn't tell Lyra right away. He wanted her to have one last peaceful moment. She spent the morning helping him repair the solar panels outside. She liked the open view of space. She said it made her feel alive. Your stars are beautiful, she said softly through the radio in her helmet. Ethan smiled. They're everyone's stars, he replied. When they returned inside, she looked more relaxed. She made tea from dried herbs she had found in one of his storage crates, saying it smelled like her home. They sat quietly, sipping it in the control room. Then suddenly the warning light blinked red. Ethan stood up quickly. They're here, he whispered. Lyra turned toward the window. Several bright dots had appeared far away, ships moving fast. She could feel the energy in her body react like something inside her waking up. They found me, she said softly, her voice calm but filled with sadness. Ethan looked at her. We can still hide, he said quickly. I can shut down all systems, make it look empty. She shook her head. No, they will search. They never stop. He clenched his jaw. Then we'll run. She looked surprised. Run? Where? Anywhere, Ethan said, determination in his voice. I won't let them take you. For a moment, Lyra just stared at him, her violet eyes wide. You would risk for me? She asked softly. Yes, he said simply. Because you're my friend. Her lips trembled as she smiled. In my world, no one ever said that to me. They worked together to prepare the small ship. Ethan moved fast, checking the engines, loading the navigation data, while Lyra helped with what she could. She placed her hand on the ship's console and it glowed faintly, as if she was sharing her own energy with it. Ethan didn't understand how, but the systems began to respond faster than normal. How are you doing that? He asked. She smiled faintly. My kind, we connect to things. Energy listens. The sound of distant static filled the room. The Dominion ships had begun to scan the area. Lyra turned to him. If they find you help me, they will not forgive. Ethan met her eyes and said, Then let them come. I made my choice. She looked at him silently for a long moment, her eyes shining like small stars. You are strange, human, she whispered. You help without gain, he chuckled softly. Maybe that's what makes us human. They lifted off just as the first sensor pinged from the approaching fleet. The small ship shook, but Lyra reached out, her hand glowing faintly, calming the vibration. Ethan focused on the navigation screen, steering toward the dark side of the moon. Behind them, space flickered with the light of faraway engines. For a while, everything was silent except the soft hum of the ship and the beating of their hearts. Lyra closed her eyes, whispering in her own tongue. The pendant around her neck glowed brighter, and Ethan felt a strange warmth fill the cockpit. "What's that?" he asked gently. "Hope," she said quietly, "and memory of home." Ethan didn't know if they would make it far, but something inside him told him they would. The moment he chose to help her, his life had already changed. He didn't understand her world or her powers, but he understood one thing. Kindness was never wasted. As the ship flew deeper into the dark sky, Lyra looked out through the glass. "Ethan," she whispered, "I never had family. But maybe, now I do." He looked at her with a quiet smile. "Maybe you do," he said softly. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, shining over two small travelers, a human mechanic and an alien princess, who had met by chance, yet were bound now by something stronger than fear. Neither of them knew what awaited beyond the horizon, but both felt the same truth inside their hearts, that their journey together had only just begun. The small ship drifted through the darkness of space, far from the station that had once been Ethan's home. He watched the fading lights of the mining moon disappear behind them, and for the first time in years he felt both free and uncertain. The silence of space pressed around them, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's engine and the quiet breathing of the girl beside him. Lyra sat in the co-pilot seat, her hands resting gently on the console. Her violet eyes followed the distant stars, glowing faintly like two small orbs of light. "They will search," she said softly. "They always search." Ethan nodded but kept his voice calm. "We'll stay ahead of them. The universe is big enough." She looked at him, almost smiling. "You believe that?" "I have to," he said. "If we stop believing, we stop trying." Lyra tilted her head, studying him as if she were seeing something new. "Humans always hope, even when they are afraid." Ethan chuckled quietly. "That's probably the only thing we're good at." They flew for hours without speaking. The stars drifted past like silent watchers. Ethan adjusted the coordinates toward a quiet system, a place he knew few travelers visited. It was an old mining zone filled with floating rocks and broken satellites. It would be a good place to hide. After some time, Lyra leaned her head against the seat, looking tired. "You should rest," Ethan said gently. "You haven't slept in 2 days." She shook her head. "If I sleep, I see them. I hear their voices." He didn't ask who they were. He could feel her pain without needing to know the details. "You're safe now," he said softly. "You're not alone." Her eyes softened. "Not alone," she repeated as if she liked the way it sounded. When she finally closed her eyes, Ethan turned his gaze to the stars again. He thought about everything that had happened. The distress signal, her strange arrival, the truth about who she was. He wondered how his quiet life had turned into something so uncertain. Yet deep down, he didn't regret any of it. After a few hours, Lyra woke up quietly. She looked at Ethan and said, "You did not rest." He smiled. "Couldn't. Someone has to keep this old ship from falling apart." She looked at the console, then placed her hand on it. A soft blue light spread across the panels and the ship's hum grew smoother, almost musical. Ethan blinked. "What did you just do?" "Balance," she said softly. "Your machines are kind. They listen." He watched in wonder. "You mean you can speak to them?" She smiled faintly. "Not speak, feel. All things have energy. I can guide it." Ethan leaned back, shaking his head slowly. "That's something humans can't even imagine." Lyra turned her gaze to him. "Humans imagine everything. That is your gift." Her words stayed with him for a long time. They stopped near a quiet asteroid field, letting the ship hide among the rocks. Ethan ran scans, no signals, no signs of pursuit yet. Lyra floated near the observation window, her eyes glowing softly in the reflected starlight. "Do you miss your home?" she asked. Ethan thought for a moment. "Sometimes, but I think home is not a place. It's who you're with." She looked at him with a quiet smile. "Then maybe I find home now." The words touched something deep inside him. He didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. As they shared a small meal, Ethan noticed the pendant around her neck pulsing faintly. "It's glowing again," he said. Lyra touched it gently. "It feels danger near," he frowned. "But I didn't detect anything." She shook her head. "Machines see metal and light. This sees feeling. Ethan checked the sensors again, but they still showed nothing unusual. Still, her expression made him uneasy. "We'll move soon," he said. Later, when Ethan stepped into the engine bay to check the coils, he found Lyra standing there, eyes closed, her hands hovering above the power core. The air shimmered faintly around her. "Lyra?" he asked softly. She opened her eyes slowly. "I was helping your ship heal." "It was tired." He smiled gently. "Ships don't get tired." She looked at him, her tone calm. "Everything that moves feels." He didn't argue. He believed her. A soft light passed through the ship's walls then, as if the energy itself had calmed. Lyra walked closer to him, her expression thoughtful. "When I first saw you," she said quietly, "I thought you would send me away. Humans do not help strangers from my world." Ethan looked at her and said, "You weren't a stranger. You were someone in need." Her lips curved in a small, grateful smile. "And now I am someone found." He didn't fully understand what she meant, but he could feel the meaning in her voice. The peaceful silence lasted only a short while. A soft alarm beeped on the console, a faint trace detected far behind them. The Dominion was not far anymore. Ethan saw Lyra's eyes flicker with worry. "They never stop," she whispered. Ethan thought for a moment, then said, "If they're following us, maybe we can trick them. I know some old mining tunnels on a nearby planet. We can hide there until they pass." She nodded quickly. "I trust you." They changed course. As they moved closer to the small planet, the ship passed through clouds of dust and light. The planet below glowed faintly orange, covered in soft mist. Ethan guided the ship gently through the atmosphere and landed in a quiet canyon filled with golden stones. When they stepped outside, the air smelled faintly sweet, like wildflowers. Lyra smiled as she looked around. "So beautiful," she whispered. "It reminds me of my world." Before it changed, Ethan walked beside her. "You said they wanted to use you. What did they want you to do?" She hesitated, then looked at her glowing hands. "They say my energy can control stars. They want me to join their army to bend light and power for them. But I don't want to fight. I want to heal. I want to make things grow again." Ethan listened quietly, his heart heavy for her. "Then you'll do that," he said. "You'll make things grow again somewhere safe." She looked at him with gentle eyes. "You always say simple words, but they feel strong." He smiled softly. "Maybe simple is all we need." They spent the evening sitting by the ship, watching the strange sky turn shades of purple and blue. The stars seemed to move slowly, as if dancing. Lyra hummed a quiet song in her own language. Ethan didn't understand the words, but the tune was calm and full of hope. When the night grew colder, Lyra looked at him and said, "Ethan, you changed my path. I ran from fear, but you showed me kindness. In my world, no one ever gave kindness without reason." He replied gently, "Sometimes we don't need a reason to care. Sometimes it's just right." She looked at him for a long moment, then smiled softly. "Then maybe kindness is the most powerful thing." Ethan nodded. "Maybe it is." The two sat quietly, side by side, under the soft glow of alien stars. Neither spoke again, but both understood what the silence meant. The danger was not over, yet for that one night they found peace, a small island of calm in a vast, uncertain universe. The soft glow of the morning light spread across the golden canyon. Ethan stood outside the small ship, looking at the calm sky. It was hard to believe that only a few weeks ago, he had been alone on a cold station, living without purpose. Now he had a reason to wake up each day, and it came in the form of a gentle alien girl with silver skin and kind violet eyes. Lyra stepped out of the ship, carrying a small cup of warm drink she had made from local plants. She handed it to him with a small smile. "Good morning," she said softly. Ethan smiled back. "Morning, Lyra. You sleep well?" She nodded. "I dream less now. The stars were quiet last night." "That's good," he said, taking a sip of the drink. It tasted sweet like fruit and sunlight. "You've been learning fast. You even made tea better than I do." Lyra laughed gently. "I learned from watching you." They sat down on a rock nearby, facing the soft light rising from behind the hills. For a moment there was peace. No sounds of machines, no fear of being chased, only the soft wind brushing through the canyon. But deep inside, Ethan knew this peace could not last forever. The Dominion would keep searching. Sooner or later they might find her. He looked at Lyra. She seemed calm, but her eyes carried a quiet sadness, like someone who already knew that truth. "Lyra," he said carefully, You know they might still come. She nodded slowly. Yes, I feel them far away, but they are close in heart. They do not stop. Then we should plan what to do next, Ethan said. We can't keep running forever. She looked down at her hands, the soft light beneath her skin flickering gently. I know, she whispered. But maybe there is another way. Maybe if they see I am not a threat, they will stop. Ethan wasn't sure, but he didn't want to take away her hope. If anyone can make them listen, it's you, he said kindly. She looked at him, her expression soft. You believe in me. I always have, he replied. Since the first day I found you? Her lips curved in a small smile. Then maybe your faith will save me. That day they decided to repair an old satellite on the planet's surface to send a peaceful signal, not to fight, but to talk. Lyra said she would use her energy to create a message that showed peace instead of fear. Together they worked for hours. Ethan adjusted the circuits and built new connections, while Lyra shaped the energy field with her glowing hands. The satellite began to shine with a gentle silver light. Ethan stepped back amazed. It's beautiful, he said. It carries feeling, Lyra said softly. Not words, just feeling. What feeling did you send? He asked. She smiled. Kindness, the one you gave me. As the satellite released its light into the sky, Ethan felt something warm move through the air. It was like hope taking form. He didn't know if anyone would receive it, but he believed it would travel far. That night they sat near the small fire they had built. The stars above shimmered softly. Lyra looked at them and said, Do you think your people would have helped me too? Ethan thought for a while. Maybe not all, he admitted, but some would. There are good hearts everywhere, she nodded. Then maybe kindness can travel like your message, through space, through fear. He smiled. I think it already has. For a long while they sat quietly listening to the wind. Then, without warning, the air shimmered faintly. The pendant around Lyra's neck began to glow brighter than ever. She gasped softly. They answered, she whispered. Ethan stood. Who? The Dominion, she said. They feel the message. Are they coming here? Lyra closed her eyes, focusing on the light. Yes, she said quietly, but it feels different. Not anger, something else. Ethan felt both fear and curiosity. Then we'll wait and see. Hours passed as they watched the horizon. The sky remained still, then finally a faint light appeared far above. It wasn't the sharp light of warships. It was softer, almost like a signal returning a greeting. Lyra looked at it, tears in her eyes. They understand, she whispered. They feel peace, Ethan's heart lifted. So your message worked, she nodded, smiling through her tears. They will not harm. They will not take. They will only watch now. He let out a long breath of relief. Then you're free, Lyra. She turned to him, her eyes shining like the stars. I am free because of you. He smiled, shaking his head. No, you freed yourself. I just opened a door. She stepped closer, placing her hand gently on his arm. On my world, she said softly. We believe that lives touch for reason. You found me when I was lost. You gave me hope when I had none. You changed my fate. Ethan looked at her quietly. Maybe you changed mine too. I was lost before you came. Now I know what it means to care again. For a moment, they stood in silence. Two souls from different worlds sharing one small truth, that kindness could cross any distance. In the days that followed, they stayed on the peaceful planet. Lyra helped the plants grow again using her gentle energy, turning the dry soil into green fields. Ethan repaired old machines and built small shelters for travelers who might pass through someday. Together, they turned the canyon into a living place full of warmth. Sometimes when the nights were quiet, Lyra would hum her songs while Ethan worked on his tools. The sound filled the air with calm and comfort. Other times they sat side by side watching the stars, speaking about dreams of new worlds, ones where humans and aliens could live without fear. Months passed, and the legend of a human who showed kindness to a lost alien spread quietly through nearby colonies. Pilots spoke of it as a story of hope, saying that even in the vastness of space, small acts could change destinies. Ethan didn't care about legends. He was happy with his quiet life, fixing ships and tending the fields beside Lyra. She never wore her royal pendant again, but she kept it safe as a memory, not of her title, but of the journey that taught her what freedom meant. One evening, as the orange sun set behind the hills, Lyra looked at Ethan and said softly, Do you ever miss your stars? He smiled. Sometimes. But now I think I've found a new one right here. She looked at him with warmth in her eyes. Then we both found what we were looking for. And as the light faded and the first stars appeared above, the two sat quietly, a human who had once lived in silence and an alien who had once lived in fear, now sharing peace in a world that had no reason to know them, but every reason to remember them. For kindness had done what no weapon, no power, no crown could ever do. It had changed two lives forever and left a light in the universe that would never fade.